Oh, sure, sorry. Okay. So what we do is we provide mediation services and also conflict coaching and facilitation services. And we also do workshops and trainings to help people learn the skills that they need to resolve conflict. So today, we're going to talk about some of the programs that we have. Everyone deals with conflict a little bit differently. Some of us avoid it. Some of us like to try to win. Some of us try arguing louder than the other person. And most of us get busy in trying to prove we're right when we're in a conflict. And we're trying to introduce you to the skills that maybe you can have a more positive outcome from being part of a conflict. This is one of our favorite quotes. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. And that's by James Baldwin. We believe that when you use the right tools, that you can transform a conflict from dividing us and instead bringing people together. So Allison and I are going to do a little demo to give you an idea of how these skills and tools can help you when you are faced with a conflict. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I'll just go down.
Okay. All right. So to introduce the demo, the characters are Allison and Anne are sisters. Their father lives in Chatham and can no longer live alone. He has 2 daughters, both Allison and Anne. There is only 2 daughters. And he wants to stay in his home if he can, but he doesn't want to be a burden on his daughters. Allison is the baby of the family, and she lives in Harwich. She's a single mom, has 2 children, and she wants her father to move into an assisted living. Anne is Allison's older half-sister. She lives in Providence and wants to arrange in-home care so that Dad can continue to stay in his home. A little background on the story. Dad has difficulty getting around, and he's gotten very forgetful. So he asked his daughters to help him figure out what to do. Anne found a service to provide care for Dad in his home and called her dad to tell him. When Allison visited her dad later that day, he told Allison what Anne had said. Allison was furious. She was furious that Anne had made arrangements without asking her, and that she went ahead and told her father, again, without talking to her first. She called Anne and told her they need to talk. Anne agreed to come to the Cape for the weekend to talk about it, and Anne stayed at her dad's house. The girls agreed to have coffee at their father's house in the morning to talk it out.
Here we go again. Anne thinks everything is about her, and that she's always right just because she's the oldest. Who do you think you are getting home care for Dad without talking to me? Dad asked both of us to help him together.
You're so spoiled. It's not about you. You don't care about Dad. You just want to shove him off into some home. Dad told me he wants to stay in his house. What's your problem? I don't need to listen to you. It's about what Dad wants.
Oh, yes, you need to listen to me. Dad can't decide. He's too out of it all the time and forgets everything. I have Dad's power of attorney. You don't have a say in this.
I don't have a say in this? I don't think so, Allison. I've had it with you treating Dad like he's a child. Dad asked for my help. If you cared so much about Dad, why don't you ask him what he wants to do? I'm done talking to you. This is over.
This isn't over. I'm calling the attorney.
Thank you. Well, that went well. So
So, yeah, nothing really happened, right? The conflict ended up escalating. Allison came, she was angry, and Anne just got angrier. Nothing was resolved. They didn't help Dad. And they certainly didn't work together, which was what their father had asked them to do. So we're going to try this again. And we're going to use some of the skills that we share at our mediations and at our workshops to see if we can help Anne and Allison a little bit.
Thank you. Here we go again. Anne thinks everything is about her and that she's always right just because she's the oldest. Who do you think you are getting home care for Dad without talking to me? Dad asked both of us to help him together.
Hi, Allison. Dad's taking his nap. I just made some fresh coffee for us. It's over there. So you're upset that I told Dad he could keep living here because I found home care service. And you don't understand why I didn't talk to you about it before I told Dad. Is that right?
You are damn right I'm upset. You have no right to decide about Dad's care without talking to me first. I have Dad's power of attorney. I get to make the decisions. Dad forgets everything. You had no right to tell him he can't stay here. Now he'll be too upset to agree to move into assisted living, and it's all your fault.
Okay, so you think it's my fault if Dad won't agree to move into assisted living?
You're damn right I do.
I can see you're very upset. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can get this straightened out. But first, can you tell me what's going on?
Of course. I want Dad to stay in his house. Of course I want Dad to stay in his house if he could, but he needs help. It's great to say you hired a home care service, but I already talked to them and they said that the family needs to be available to cover if Dad's caregiver gets sick and can't come. Since I'm the one who lives around here, that means that I would need to be able to drop everything and come over.
What's that been like for you, Allison?
Awful. It's really hard to care for the kids and work full time. Dad needs more and more help. I can't do it myself anymore. I have a job and kids. I just can't keep doing this. And we can't leave Dad without help.
I know it's really hard that you're a single mom and you have to juggle work and now you have to be responsible for Dad. I don't live around here. I didn't realize that you would have to cover if the caregiver can't come. But Dad really does want to stay here if he can.
I know he does. I wish he could stay here too. But how could he?
I'm sorry I didn't talk with you first, Allison, before I mentioned it to Dad. I should have. I did hear, though, that my friend Lori from high school started a business where she helps older people. She picks up their groceries, brings them to doctor's appointments and things like that. I think we could call her and find out if she could cover when we need her. What do you think?
That's a really good idea. I remember Lori. I didn't know she was doing that. And Dad always liked her too, so she wouldn't be a stranger to him.
Dad will be up soon. Can you stay for a while and we can talk with him together?
Sure, I have today off and the kids are at school. We can bring him out for lunch. He'll love that.
Thank you. So that went just a little bit better. So what happened? It started out the same. Allison still walked up and was very angry. But this time, Anne used some of the skills that we learn. Rather than immediately reacting, she took a breath and she took a moment, she took a pause and thought about what she wanted to say. And she also actively listened to what Allison had to say. She acknowledged it, she asked her questions, she validated her feelings. And just because you acknowledged it, for instance, when she says, so you think I'm to blame, you think it's my fault, she's not saying she agrees that it's her fault. She's just acknowledging how Allison feels and what she said. And she also finds out the why. In the first skit, she automatically assumes Allison's just being selfish and doesn't want to care for Dad and wants to send him off to a home. But the second time around, she takes the time to ask her why, what's going on, how she's feeling. And she finds out that she's overwhelmed and she doesn't feel that she could even be there to help Dad if the nursing care can't come. And once they found that out, once they had that conversation, they transformed the conflict. So they actually created a conversation and they found a solution where Dad could stay in his home and Allison didn't feel so overwhelmed that she would need to be there. So thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
So now we want to introduce you to a couple of our programs. And the first one is John O'Toole, and he's going to talk about our housing initiative.
Use the hand mic. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you, Ann. So my job is to tell you a little bit about what we do in the area of housing on Cape Cod. As I'm sure everybody is very familiar with the issue on Cape Cod, especially for affordable rental apartment units, the supply and demand situation is really way out of whack. The demand for those kinds of units is high. Supply is improving, but it's got a long way to go before supply and demand come into balance. In terms of the area that we work in, the area that we're mostly involved in is various opportunities where affordable housing is available. That would be town housing authorities.
Can you use the mic?
Sorry, is that better?
You really got to hold it up.
I got it. All right. So the area we work in are working with town housing authorities, such as the Chatham Housing Authority. Every town on the Cape has a housing authority and has some number of units available for affordable housing for elderly and so forth. There are a number of nonprofit housing units. There's a housing unit up here just beyond the Chatham Housing Authority. There's a private, nonprofit housing unit. There's a number of units there as well. There are many of those across the Cape. And there are a number of folks across the Cape that are small property owners that may have 1, 2, or 3 rental units that are available at a reasonable price. So that's the area we work in. What happens basically is an area that's kind of full of possible disputes. Because of the shortage of supply of affordable housing units, when you begin to think about a dispute that might result in you losing your housing, creates a lot of anxiety and tension. These housing disputes take a number of forms. It could be between the management of the housing authority and the tenant. It can be between tenants and the housing authority. It can be between a small property owner and one of his rental units. So those venues are very common in terms of the world that we work in. There are also opportunities for dispute resolution when roommates have disputes. Again, all this is driven by the fact that when someone is in a dispute and there's a fear of possibly losing their housing, it creates a very tense, anxiety-producing situation. These disputes, what do they look like? People typically stop talking to one another, or if they are talking to one another, they're actually talking past one another, so there's not any real communication going on. People are usually locked in their position. They insist that they're right. Oftentimes the positions from the two parties are quite different, and so it creates a real block to having effective communication. oftentimes the tenant has stopped paying their rent, putting the homeowner, in the case of a small homeowner, in a real jam because he may have a mortgage to deal with as well. One of the underlying concerns here is one of the members of this, or one of the participants in the dispute may feel that they will be subject to an eviction action, not uncommon, or when his lease expires, it may not be renewed, so this contributes to the fear of losing their home. So in that situation, what does Cape Mediation bring to the picture? So we have a team of experienced and trained mediators that will get involved in these situations. We're brought in by a third party typically because the parties are not really communicating and they're tense and upset. Our team of mediators comes from a variety of backgrounds. Some of us are former attorneys, others are school teachers, others are in the medical profession, others are real estate brokers. So it comes from a variety of backgrounds. Kind of the desire is that they have some empathy for people who are in a dispute of some sort. And we all the mediators do this on a part-time, pro bono basis. When we come into a dispute, we kind of work on the basis of probably 4 key principles that we're all trained in and practice throughout the course of our mediation careers. One of those principles is something called self-determination. What does that mean? That means that ultimately when the parties sit down to try and resolve their dispute, they are the ones who will formulate a resolution. The mediator does not tell the parties what to do or recommend anything. They'll encourage them to talk about various options. But the important part is that the parties in dispute will develop the resolution. The likelihood is that that dispute will stick a lot longer than it would be if a resolution is imposed by a mediator or another fact finder. The second principle is neutrality. The mediator is duty-bound to act in a neutral way and not to favor one party or the other. Fourth principle is the fact that any participant in this dispute process or this mediation process does it voluntarily. If they choose not to want to continue, they're free to step aside and there's no negative implication for that. And the fourth principle is the discussions during a mediation session are confidential. The idea is that it allows the parties to say things that they don't have to fear that will come back to bite them in some other situation later on if there's another form of dispute resolution. So how do we implement these principles in a particular dispute situation? First of all, we sit down with both parties as a group. So there'll be typically 2 mediators and then a party or on both sides of the issue. We'll ask the parties to share what's brought them to the or the mediation session. We'll hear that, and both parties will hear what the other party has to say, and that's the beginning of the point where they may begin to talk to one another, since historically they probably have turned their ears off when they're having any kind of conversation with their whoever they're in dispute with. After we have what we'll call a joint session, we'll then sit down and talk with each party privately. The goal in that private session is to learn kind of what's really going on behind the scenes, a little bit as Ian and Allison demonstrated in their second scenario, and give the party a chance to share something that they might not want to share with the other party when they're present. So it's a little bit of kind of getting to find out what the issue really is under the surface. Oftentimes there's a dispute about something, and oftentimes it's driven by something else that's going on. And our goal is to try to find out what that underlying interest is. After we meet with the parties privately, then the mediation team will meet and decide what they want to do next. In some cases, we may bring the parties back together and have a session when we encourage them to talk directly to one another. In other situations, we'll actually have another round of private sessions. During the course of the private sessions, we're beginning to ask the parties, what's important to you here? again, getting at that underlying concern that they may have. And have you thought about any ways that you might resolve this particular situation? That begins to get the wheels turning oftentimes in the minds of the parties. Ultimately, we'll bring the parties back together and begin a process to sort of outline to them what the situation is. It may be that if they're in a town housing authority, the housing authority may be in a situation where they actually want one of the parties to leave. That may result in an eviction action. It may not, but there'll be a kind of a status check in terms of where the parties are with respect to their dispute. Then we'll encourage the parties to speak to one another directly, much like Ann and Allison did in the scenarios that they laid out a few minutes ago. And oftentimes, that's the first time the parties have begun to communicate with one another directly in quite a while. And oftentimes that helps begin the beginning of to formulate a resolution to their particular dispute. Ultimately, when we get to that point, we'll then, if there's a resolution, we'll ask the parties whether they want to write it down so there's actually an agreement, or if they want to keep it on an oral basis. And at that point, we've probably done what we can using many of the tools that we've been trained in and practiced for in many of our cases for quite a number of years. Historically, in this area, particularly in the housing area, of the cases that are referred to us, we probably facilitate a resolution with the parties probably 2/3 of the time. So it's a pretty successful track record from our perspective. So that's kind of a pretty good overview of what our initiative is in the area of housing disputes. And with that, Ann, let me turn it back to you.
Thank you, John. And that was a great summary of how mediation works. One of our other programs that we do, there we go, is our partnership program. And what we do in our partnership program is we work with businesses, organizations, groups, and we help them to manage workplace conflict, or sometimes, especially we found after folks came back together after COVID, when everyone was isolated and wasn't getting together, that they came back and they couldn't really communicate with each other. They couldn't work effectively. Oh, did I lose my mic? Okay. And so what we do is we meet with the management or the department heads, and we talk with them to find out really what the issue is, what they're facing, and then we tailor a program for them. And it consists of interviewing the staff members individually and anonymously, so as John said, they can feel comfortable sharing with us. And because we're neutral, they're much more likely to share what's important, what they may be uncomfortable with sharing with their manager. And then we'll do a series of surveys as well. And then we'll take the information we learned and we'll create a summary report to share with management so that they can have an idea of what needs to change, what can work better, what's not working. They're oftentimes very surprised at what the answers are. And then oftentimes we'll follow it up by having a group discussion where as neutrals, we'll be there and we'll facilitate discussion, giving everyone a chance to have a voice and, very importantly, to be able to hear what other people have to say, but in a structured, safe environment. And a lot of times we find that doing that, putting that together, then they really start the process of creating new steps or a new process on how to move forward. It's actually very exciting to be able to be part of that. And sometimes they'll even ask us to come back and do a workshop training to help people gain even more communication skills, as you saw in the skit. I could talk about this all day, but I see it's getting really late, and I know Allison wants to tell you about our youth program, which is very exciting.
Thank you. I'm sitting over there shaking my legs like I can't wait to talk about this. So another one of our programs is the youth program. I am extremely passionate about this one, as you can tell. We offer our conflict management, conflict resolution workshops to students at the undergraduate level, high school level, law school, as well as we are developing a program for middle schoolers. So with that being said, I want you to think about a time when you were in middle school, high school, or college. Can you remember a time when you had a conflict with a peer, a coach, a professor, a teammate, a friend, or a significant other? That's the answer you typically get. So I think it's safe to say that we've all been there. Speaking from my own experience, I know that when I was in high school, I know it really wasn't that long ago, I didn't really have any real conflict resolution skills. I saw disagreements as battles to win, opportunities to prove someone else wrong, or problems so big that they only could end in broken relationships. And sadly, sometimes they did. So today, the youth face the same kind of challenges, and often without the tools to handle them in a healthy, constructive way. And these young people are our future leaders of businesses, of our courts, sports teams, and most importantly, our community here on Cape Cod. So Cape Mediation's youth workshops are designed to equip our young people with the skills that they need to face these conflicts head on. Not as something to fear or avoid, but as a chance for growth, understanding, and positive change. And we want them to see that conflict doesn't always have to divide, and that it can actually connect and strengthen relationships when it's handled well. So the programs that we're offering currently are Fundamentals of Managing Sports Conflict. We did this at Nauset Regional High School. We did a series of workshops there for the sports captains, and we will be expanding that as well. Fundamentals of Managing Business Conflicts for students in the Intro to Business courses at 4Cs, Cape Cod Community College, and an Introduction to Mediation and Conciliation for law students at UMass Law. And finally, we are developing a Fundamentals of Conflict Management through Gaming for students at the middle school level.
Thank you, Allison. And we are so excited about these programs, and to have Allison be heading up our youth program division, and together with our youth intern, they have come up with these amazing ideas, and I'm very excited to see what the gaming particularly is going to look like. So thank you for that. So I see that it's after 11:30. So just to sum up what we do, next slide. Our mission, as we see it, our goal at Cape Mediation is we want to bring people together. And at a time now when it feels like the world is pushing us all apart, but we all have an opportunity right now and a choice. And we want to make the world a better place by choosing to meet conflict head on. And we want to help anyone else who wants to do that, and particularly with our youth program, as Allison said, if we can teach folks this. I didn't learn these skills till I was much older than high school. And if folks can learn these skills as they're becoming adults, as they're going off in the world and going off to college, I think we can really, these are our future leaders. These are our future citizens, and I think we can really make a huge impact. So I'm very excited to be part of this program. And thank you so much. If anybody's interested in what we're doing, we have a newsletter. The QR code, I believe, is up on the screen. You can hop onto our website, follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. We also have an event coming up. Thanks for the wonderful folks at Chatham Orpheum. We did a movie last year, and we plan to get back there again this year in the fall. And we also have mediation training coming up, and we offer workshops. So there's plenty of ways of getting involved, or just following us if anyone's interested. So thank you very much. And in closing, just one of our favorite quotes from William Ury: facing challenges is how we as individuals and groups learn, grow, and change. Thank you.